everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Heather, and today I'm here to do what I think is a relatively unknown book tag, at least on English-speaking BookTube. And that is the Reader's Rights book tag. I originally saw this tag on the channel Cumbres Clásicas, who is a wonderful booktuber. I am very intrigued by her videos. She does do her videos completely in Spanish. The original was Derechos del Lector, which I translated as Reader's Rights. So I will be doing this tag in English, but I will leave the questions in both Spanish and English down below in case you would also like to do this tag. So this tag was created to mirror almost the Bill of Rights or the Constitution, but specially made for readers, so it's very tongue-in-cheek. So the first right a reader has is the right to not read, and that's a book whose adaptation you have loved, but you haven't actually read it. I am usually very, very particular about reading books either before or after seeing the film. Preferably before, but if I don't know that it is a book beforehand, afterwards will do. The only possible exception I might be able to think of is the television series The Irish RM, but I may be reading that book very soon. But I can leave it in here for right now. The Irish RM is a series of vignettes, possibly short stories, about life in rural Ireland in 1899, where Major Yates is sent from England to be the resident magistrate for this particular town in Ireland, and all of the comical mayhem that ensues as he and his wife Philippa adjust to life in this new town. I'm terribly sorry, I just remembered another book as well, and that is Cocaine Blues by Carrie Greenwood. This is one of the books in the Miss Fisher's Murder Mystery series. Again, I love the television show, but I have not yet read this book, and to be honest, I'm debating with myself whether or not I want to. I have flipped through it, and I'm not so sure I love the style. But my mother has loved all of the books, so right now I'm torn. If you're not familiar with the series, Miss Fisher's Murder Mysteries take place in Australia in the 1920s, where Miss Fisher is a highly unconventional but very fun and very smart lady detective. The second right is the right to skip pages. So name a book that you have read, but only the interesting bits. And here again, I can't think of many books where I've done this. I think there must have been many more when I was a child, but I've forgotten them. I can't think of any recently that I've done that with, except for maybe that book I had to read in university about the Mexican Railroad between the 1840s and the 1870s. I'm sure the railroad was extremely important to the development of Mexico as a country during that period, but the book was deadly boring. So I only read as little as I could possibly get away with reading in order to get through the class. Next is the right to not finish a book. So name a book that you have left half read. And for this, I have to go with The Romanovs by Simon Sebag Montefiore. It's a wonderfully written history of the Romanov dynasty in Russia from 1613 until their tragic end in 1918. And I am fascinated by Russian history, and it's a beautiful book, but I have left it unread. I still have this much to go for a good 3 years now, at least. I just keep getting distracted by other books, and I never get around to finishing this one. One day I will, I promise. Really, really I will. A reader's fourth right is the right to reread. What is a book that you have read many, many times. And for me, those books have to be the works of Jane Austen. I have read these so many times since I was 13 years old, and I can't see myself stopping doing that in the future. A reader's fifth right is the right to read whatever. So for this, you need to choose a book that has either had great critical acclaim that you did not like, or a book that was not well reviewed that you actually loved. And for this, I had to go with a book that has great critical acclaim and great popularity that I did not enjoy. And that book is Gone with the Wind. I read this during my first year of university because I went to Gettysburg College, so being surrounded by one of the biggest sites of the Civil War, I thought it really behooved me to have read the foremost novel about the Civil War. The reason I didn't enjoy Gone with the Wind is that I just hated Scarlett O'Hara. I did not understand her motivations. Even if I did understand them, I couldn't agree with them. And by the end, when she says that she has finally found that thing that she's been chasing her whole life, I still had no idea what that was. And it made me really question why I had wasted all that time slogging through 1,000 or so pages. A reader's sixth right is the right to Bovaryism, which the creator calls a textually transmitted disease. So this is a book that you have bought for pure pleasure, but still haven't read. And I cannot pick just one book for this prompt. I really have to pick the entirety of my TBR. I buy those books because I think at least, that I am going to love them. But then I have so many other things to read that they end up sitting for quite a while before I get to them. And then I feel guilty about it, and it forms a whole cycle. A reader's seventh right is the right to read wherever. So what is the strangest or most dangerous place that you have read? And here again, I can't pick one particular instance. Pre-pandemic, I read anywhere, everywhere, anytime. I have read in cars, and on trains, on planes, boats, beaches, restaurants, in between classroom activities, and sometimes even at family gatherings. A reader's eighth right is the right to flip through. So what is a book that you leaf through constantly? And at the moment, I can't think of any books that I just leaf through. I'm usually too preoccupied with what I'm currently reading to go leafing through others. A reader's ninth right is the right to read aloud. So what is a book that you love to read aloud to someone else? And I have to say I have a couple of choices for this one. First of all, I love to read Good Omens aloud to other people. There's one conversation in the middle of this book between the angel Aziraphale and the demon Crowley when they are both incredibly drunk and contemplating the end of the world and eternity that I find utterly hilarious. And it's especially funny to try and read it out loud to someone else. Another book that I find almost has to be read aloud to someone else is anything by P.G. Wodehouse, especially the Jeeves and Wooster series. I find that Bertie Wooster has a particular rhythm to the way he speaks that just doesn't come across well on paper these days. But if you read it aloud to someone, the lines come to life and they become immediately funnier. I especially have fond memories of reading portions of this book aloud to my friend on the train as we were coming back from one of our last trips to New York City. Other books that, in my mind, have to be read aloud are the Paddington series by Michael Bond. I have such fond memories of my father reading these aloud to me, and sometimes to my friends as well. And he did a particularly good Mr. Curry voice. And I just find reading them aloud or having them read aloud to you just makes these stories extra cozy. And the last book that I think is far better read aloud are the Church Mice books by Graham Oakley. This is a series I loved when I was very little and that I still love now that I'm an adult. They are very hard to find these days, but you might be able to track down some copies on the internet. It is the story of Arthur, who is a mouse who lives in a church in a small town in England. And he and Samson, the cat, who has listened to too many sermons about brotherly love and has thus taken an oath of brotherly love towards mice, they begin to feel quite lonely, particularly Arthur. And so he gathers a load of other mice who are living in terribly dangerous conditions elsewhere in the world and brings them to his church in Wortlethorpe, to which the vicar agrees, as long as these mice agree to make themselves useful around the church, such as polishing the brass or picking up sweets dropped by the choir boys, things like that. And they have hilarious and wonderful adventures, and the illustrations are incredibly detailed. It's very sophisticated humor, but if you read it aloud, it just comes to life, and I love them so much, either read aloud or read to me. And a reader's final right is the right to be quiet. So what is a book that you love so much that you can't even talk about how much you love it? And quite honestly, I've struggled with this one as well, because there are so many books that are deeply near and dear to my heart, but I can usually find a way to ramble on about them, even if it's not terribly coherently. So perhaps I could say that my right to be quiet is the right for other people to tell me to please stop rambling. If you would also like to complete this tag, I would love for you to do that in Spanish, English, or any other language that you may happen to speak. Or if you're a bit shy about making videos, you can leave your answers to some of these questions in the comments down below, because I would love to read them. Until next time, be safe, be well, and happy reading. Bye everyone.